The story begins with a young girl, Nishino Akane, bathing, a melancholic expression on her face. She gets ready and her escort drives her to school. As she exits the vehicle, Nishino places a bright face and is greeted warmly by everyone. She notices Kageno, the main character, as she enters the locker room, revealing that she despises him. She also notes that he has never had good grades and that his appearance isn't very attractive. Nishino then approaches to say hello, but to her irritation, he addresses her using the wrong name. She corrects him repeatedly, and he informs her that he is typically adept at remembering important characters' names before referring to her as an NPC. Nishino Akane finds this annoying and muses that it's not the fact that he can't recall the name that frustrates her more about him. Rather, it's the way he speaks without even looking at her. As she opens her fiery eyes, her classmates surround her, asking her to confirm whether she is participating in the next drama night. In the classroom, she admits that if she could have, she would have entirely ignored Kageno. She confesses that she had an incident in show business when she was younger and had to take a break because of the scandal. And to avoid coming off as depressed in public, she's been putting up a mask ever since that event. Meanwhile, as he reads about nuclear energy, Kageno abruptly utters the phrase, "more power." When the instructor asks if anybody wants to tally the responses from the school festival survey, Nishino raises her hand to volunteer. However, the teacher stops her since she has a makeup lesson coming up. Instead, the instructor asks Kageno, who accepts. Nishino's inner monologue continues, and she admits that she plays the teacher's pet role so that the instructors will like her, and the popular girl role so that the students will like her, and that this is the only way she has lived up to the point. She is sitting in her chair after class, looking out the window at the outer world, when she suddenly hears Kageno playing the piano. This soothes her. Later that night, her butler does not arrive to fetch her up, and she becomes concerned. She calls him, but he doesn't answer because several thugs are beating him up. Nishino then makes the decision to go home alone. However, two thugs approach her as she travels and kidnap her by putting a cloth over her mouth. As she is about to pass out, she notices Kageno standing in the distance, staring at them. Later, when she awakens, the crescent is mounted on a luminous throne in the sky and she finds herself imprisoned in a chamber. She is informed by the two thugs that her father, the head of Nishino Zaibatsu, has developed a few enemies, and that they will free her as soon as they get paid. One of them, however, continues and approaches her, bringing up painful memories of her first kidnapping before unbuttoning her top. Kageno notices this through his phone camera outside their room and chooses to break through. He wears a mask and ascends to the rooftop where he enters it without difficulty. He calls himself the stylish ruffian slayer, and one of the thugs takes out a revolver immediately. However, Kageno knocks him out with his quick moves and heads on to the next one. He is confronted by the other, who laughs maniacally while saying he's in the military and hasn't seen any exciting action in a while. He raises his gun, but the vigilante is too quick, stabbing him multiple times. Kageno swiftly regains his composure and begins to overwhelm him with the crowbar. The frantic man tries to pick up the gun from the ground, but Kageno stops and uses the crowbar to shatter his skull. Then he takes out a knife and walks up to Nishino. She thinks he's going to murder him, but instead of doing so, he releases her and warns her to be careful in the future before leaving the area. He is then shown sitting just above Nishino and telling himself that it is the most he can do against an ex-soldier. He will never become the eminence in the shadows. When the cops arrive, they resolve the issue. Her father uses his connections to cover the news to prevent the public from learning about it. The following day, Nishino enters school with the same cheerful expression and everyone welcomes her. When she welcomes Kageno, he remembers her name this time, much to her amazement. She observes him staring at her for the first time and wonders whether he is the same as her because he is wearing a fake face. Later, the newscaster announces that a truck struck a local high schooler named Kageno, who has been declared dead. Meanwhile, Kageno starts his inner monologue in which he admits that he has always been different from other kids his age. He then begins to explain that humankind has limits since he would never be able to possess the kind of superhuman abilities that characters in fairy tales have. The most he can do is use martial arts to defeat certain criminals, or if he reaches his peak, he might even be able to defeat some men with weapons. Then he is reborn in a new world, and several people address him as a lord while wearing some uniform. He wishes to have magic at his disposal, would give everything for power, and wants to work in the shadows to display his might. As Kageno remembers his death, he discovers himself as a newborn on a lady's lap. His parents start to worry when he doesn't start crying, but their anxiety subsides when he does. Then he looks around and discovers that this world possesses magic, something he had wished for. They all start making strange faces at him all of a sudden, and he realizes that he has pooped. He is the son of an aristocrat who lives in the countryside. He becomes stronger as he grows, but since his older sister is more gifted than him, he is never given the attention he deserves in the family. But he doesn't give a damn since he prefers to stay hidden. One night, he faces some bad guys and starts murdering them with his slime shield, which can be used offensively and defensively. He effortlessly avoids being shot by one of them and kills his enemy. The surviving ones are then cruelly murdered next. He then begins to collect their loot when he stumbles upon a rotting piece of flesh. After realizing that he can perform magic on it without worrying about endangering it, he brings it home. In a room there, he starts experimenting on the flesh, ultimately restoring it to its former form. The lump changes into a beautiful elf with golden hair. Then he started telling her about the event that had caused her to become that way. He reveals that 3 heroes vanquished the demon lord Diablo, and as he passed away, he performed a spell that transformed her in that way. Then he confesses that he opposes the cult of Diablo, which is working to restore the demon lord. She says that before he saved her, she was a lump of meat and that, in return, she would give her life to him. After introducing himself as Shadow, he informs her that they will start hunting for those who hide in the shadows. A shadow pursuing another. He tells her that they could rebel against the global government and that many individuals would fall victim to government manipulation in their battle. She responds, however, that she would murder everyone in her path without showing compassion, guilty or innocent. Her response makes him happy, and he dresses her in a magically created uniform in order to persuade the elf, Alpha, of his beliefs, given that he invented a tale. It's time he gave their group a proper name as well. He names their group the Shadow Garden and gives her the task of recruiting members. Sometime later, Kageno, Sid in this world, is practicing with his sister. He executes several maneuvers as she comes at him, seeming as if time has frozen before letting her go on without noticing. Then she strikes him, causing him to fall into the water. Their maid summons her since she will depart for a city academy to become a dark knight. The next morning, when they awaken, they discover that someone has kidnapped her. Considering how powerful the assailant would have been, her father speculates that they not only beat her but also abducted her. When her mother hears this, she starts berating him before beating him, since they need to be more concerned about her safety at this point than praising the power of their foe. When Sid notices this, he and his maid, a member of the Shadow Garden, leave the chamber and begin looking for Claire's whereabouts. Sid selects a search area randomly, and it turns out he is correct. He learns from the other females that the offender is probably connected to the cult of Diablo, and he muses that they would associate anything with the cult of Diablo if bandits were involved. While this is happening, Claire is restrained in a dark room, and the abductor starts questioning her about how she acquired such magic powers. She tells him that she gains new knowledge every time she battles her brother. Her brother, meanwhile, has not picked up any knowledge from her. When he suggests he should find out more about her brother, she breaks the shackles and warns him not to go after him. He responds by violently punching her in the face, which causes her to collapse. Then he learns there are intruders in their cells. They rush forward to beat them, but Alpha and the other females easily beat them. They declare that they are knowledgeable about the cult of Diablo when the chief in charge comes, and he is taken aback that someone is aware of the top secret matter. Alpha confronts him, and she assures him that she won't murder him because she wants to know everything. After taking a pill, he becomes furious and attacks his foes, but he decides to flee when he learns he can't win against them all. Sid, meanwhile, discovers a secret entrance while wandering in the basement jail. The adversary emerges from it and starts to assault him. He takes many strength tablets and declares that he will show him what true darkness looks like, since Sid is much stronger than him. Sid easily defeats him, and as he is ready to pass away, he muses on the possibility that this boy could be able to vanquish the darkness. The next day, her sister shows up at the house by herself in an enraged mood. When she departs for the school, he bids her farewell. Later, while he contemplates that he still has 2 years until graduating from the academy, Alpha and other females unexpectedly come behind him and say farewell, much to his astonishment. As he travels by train to the capital for his academic studies, he believes that Alpha and the others became bored with his phony Cult of Diablo project and bid him farewell. He goes on to say that even if he were the last person on Earth, he would still make an effort to be the strongest. Then it is revealed that he attempted to learn magic on the day he died in the previous universe, but was unsuccessful. So, he leaped in front of a vehicle. He lands in the densely populated royal city of the Midgar Kingdom. He'll be attending the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights. After 7 months, he is settled in well and has a dorm room. As they go to the academy, Skell and Poe, 2 new friends he has found, remind him of the bet they made for receiving the lowest exam scores by suggesting the most popular student in the school. Sid reassures them they shouldn't worry since he has a fantastic plan to propose to her as the cliched student and then be rejected. When they see her reject someone else later at school, his friends tell him he will also turn out like him. He proposes to Princess Alexia in the most extreme rom-comish manner conceivable, and she accepts, much to his surprise. From then on, everyone begins talking behind him. As they prepare to have lunch, his friends comment that if someone so mild-looking as Sid had his way with a gorgeous girl like Alexia, even they would have a chance. Suddenly, they see her standing next to them, and she asks if she may eat lunch with them. They agree. Then, a variety of royal meals are placed on their table, and Sid consumes them shamelessly and cheerfully. He believes that by doing this, he will quickly convince her to break up with him, but his strategy backfires when she says they will begin studying together. When he explains that she is in Section 1 and he is in Section 9, the lowest of the low, she responds that she spoke with her teacher and that he would be transferred to her class. The next day, their teacher, Mr. Zenon, presents him to the class and explains that anybody who can tolerate the crowd's gaze is now permitted to do so instead of just the royals having access to the first area. In contrast to her sister, who is renowned as the greatest Dark Knight in the Midgar Kingdom, Alexia's attack pattern is too planned and predictable. Throughout the exercise, she mimics his stretches, which he sees when practicing with her. She approaches the teacher, with whom she has a political relationship, and tells him she is dating Sid. Later, when Sid tells her not to get him involved in disputes, she reveals to him that Skell and Poe, 2 of his friends, had informed her about the proposal, and that he must continue the act until Mr. Zenon gives up on her. She then throws a coin, which he quickly grabs like a sweet puppy. The next day, she rambles about Mr. Zenon when they go for ice cream in the city. When Sid asks her why she despises Zenon so much, she responds that it's because he has no flaws, unlike Sid, who is plagued with them. She hands him another coin just as they are getting ready to leave, and he happily accepts it. Later, on the train, when she expresses displeasure with her fencing style, he repeatedly compliments it, infuriating her and prompting her to draw a blade and aim it in his direction. When the train arrives at the station, she is the first to exit and say goodbye to him. He believes it to be nothing more than a way of expressing the end of their relationship, but there is more at play. The following day, the elite Dark Knights arrive at the school and surround him, as Princess Alexia hasn't returned from her room since the previous night, and they suspect abduction. When they inform him that he is the prime suspect, he follows their orders and realizes how much danger he is in. The end. Will Sid be able to find Alexia? How will this made-up group proceed in their doings? Find out in the coming episode.